This
and
conference will now be recorded.
I will give you a brief overview on what clinical research is, what clinical data management is, and along with that, a brief information about SAS as well, because SAS is also intermingled with the whole cycle, we can say. So I'm just sharing my screen so that you can see the presentation. During the session, I just request all of you to keep your microphones on mute. And in case if you have any queries, any technical queries or any other queries related to the programs, you can drop your message in the chat box and just keep your microphones on mute so that we can have an uninterrupted session. Okay, so basically, when we talk about clinical research is actually a branch of healthcare science. Rather, it's very emerging sector now in the healthcare society. The reason behind this is very well known to us that since there are every now and then new diseases which are emerging, diseases which are getting complicated day by day, so maybe the existing therapies that we have might not work in the same fashion, in the same efficacious manner, or with the same amount of safety as it used to work earlier. We have seen that with the change of time there are a lot of diseases like which are lifestyle disorders, like we have hypertension, diabetes, we have different kinds of cancers. Very recent is the COVID-19. Till now we don't have any existing treatment for it. So research is actually very important, and it helps us to provide information, it helps us to provide data on what is the safety and what is the efficacy of the molecule or the vaccine. Now we all know that in order to bring any new drug into the market, we need to have information, we need to have data, because any drug cannot be directly marketed, it cannot be given to the entire community as a whole. We need to have sufficient information about the safety, about the kind of side effects which can happen with the drug, how much safe it is, what is the percentage of safety, is it actually beneficial in curing the disease or not, what is the efficacy percentage. So that is absolutely necessary. So clinical research are basically those kind of experiments, these are those kind of investigations, we can say, which is conducted on humans, because animal data is not sufficient. Based just on the animal data, any drug cannot be marketed, it cannot be used by the people. So it these are investigations which are carried out on human subjects, and these investigations provide us with information on the safety and the efficacy data, so that the drug can be further marketed and it can be used. So when we talk about research, this is only conducted, so human studies are also only conducted after we have sufficient preclinical information, which means once we have discovered a molecule, then we need to carry out certain kind of studies, like we need to have the toxicity studies, we need to have the mutagenicity studies, that whether the molecule causes any mutations in the uh, like in the genes or not. We need to have sufficient evidence from the reprotoxicity, how the drug behaves, is it altering the reproductive potential or not. We need to have information on the teratogenicity, like is it causing any deformities in the fetus or not, because all this data has to be submitted to the regulatory authorities. I will tell you about the regulatory authorities in the next upcoming slides. So all this data has to be submitted to the regulatory authorities, and without their approval, we cannot market a drug. So it is the clinical trials or the clinical research is only conducted after satisfactory and promising information has been gathered from the non-clinical or the preclinical studies, and regulatory authority and the ethics committee both have granted approval. So it is not only the regulatory authorities, we also need the approval of the ethics committee of the hospital or the site where we want to do the clinical trials. So both of the approvals are necessary before we start any clinical trials in a hospital. Now coming to the important terminologies. So as you can see, we have three terms. One is the experimental unit. Second is the term intervention. And the third is the term evaluation. So experimental unit is the word which we use for patients, the subjects who are participating, on whom we are going to conduct the clinical trials. The second word, intervention, is the new molecule, the vaccine or the new therapy on which we are or with which we are doing the clinical trials. The third term is evaluation, which means once we give the new molecule to the patient, what are we going to evaluate? What are we going to find out? What is the objective of the study? What are we going to observe at the end of the study? What will be the information which is going to be submitted in the clinical study report? So that is the evaluation. Basically, at the end of the study, for example, if we are doing an oncology study, the evaluation would be the decrease in the tumor size, right? Maybe in addition to that, we will also observe that what are the percentage of side effects which your chemotherapy is going to cause. So that is the evaluation. That is the ultimate information that we are seeking when we are doing the clinical trials. Now coming to the need of research. So the reason why we do research, as I said, that any new therapy, any new intervention cannot be used, it cannot be marketed without approval, without sufficient data. So the need of research is to test, to investigate how well, how safe the new therapy is, how better it will be working on the human subjects, and it is important to bring the new drug into the market. Apart from this, it is also required to provide additional information on the molecules which we already have. Now, for example, you have a molecule A, which is an already marketed product. Now, that molecule A is beneficial for some disease XYZ. We further want to see that the same molecule A, is it beneficial for some other disease or not? Is it going to act in an efficacious manner for some other disease or not? So we can't simply submit the information to the regulatory authority that okay, this molecule is going to work in the new disease also, and so we want approvals. No, we have to prove to them that yes, the molecule would be beneficial, it will be of advantage to the new indication, to the new disease that we are talking about. So it helps us to contribute, to add to the existing knowledge, to add to the existing information. Coming to the process, so drug discovery to pharmacy, that is the general process we call. So the entire process comprises of three main steps. First is drug discovery, which means we discover the molecule in the laboratory, which has certain steps. It comprises of 4 different steps, which is the lead compound identification, the lead compound validation, the target identification, and the target validation. Then the second step is the drug development. So drug development means moving the drug from the initial phase, that is from the preclinical stage, to the pharmacy. So it comprises of the stages like the preclinical stage, where the testing is done in vitro or in vivo. It is carried out on animals or either in laboratories. Then the second step is we submit an application to the regulatory authority, taking their approval to carry out the human testing. So after the preclinical stage, we submit an application. In the US FDA, it is known as IND, Investigational New Drug Application. Then once we get the permission, we start with the phase 1 studies. So moving ahead, we do the phase 1 trials, we do the phase 2 trials, and then we do the phase 3 trials. So all this is the drug development stage. And once the phase 3 trials are concluded, then we submit another application, which is known as NDA. NDA stands for New Drug Application. So once the NDA has been approved by the regulatory authority, then we move to the next cycle, next step of the cycle, which is the phase 4 or the post-marketing surveillance studies. And once the phase 4 studies are conducted, again the data is submitted to the regulatory authorities, and then after getting permission, the drug is further manufactured and then it is sold and marketed. I would like to add here is that as we say pharmacovigilance, so pharmacovigilance is not only limited to, it's not only limited to the post-marketing surveillance. It is not only limited only to phase 4 trials. Pharmacovigilance has a role in the clinical trials as well, because in the beginning slide we said that we want data on the safety and the efficacy. So who is going to monitor that safety data? Who is going to analyze that safety data? It is the pharmacovigilance team. So they have a role there also, and once the drug is marketed, then also we have the safety surveillance ongoing, because any new drug, once it comes into the market, will remain in the market as a new drug for the next 4 years. So the sponsors or the pharmaceutical company, they have to continuously submit the safety data at frequent time points to the regulatory authorities. Now coming to the need for regulations. So regulations are basically, it helps the sponsors, it helps the people who are working in the clinical trials, like for example, the investigators, the ethics committee, then the other research staff, that is the clinical research coordinators or the CTAs, or maybe the other vendors who are working for the clinical trials. These regulations help them to do the clinical trials in a proper manner. So we have certain guidelines, and the need for these guidelines or the need for these regulations emerged from the tragedies. So as you can see, I have listed down certain tragedies. It's again, I would say, when you go into the history of research, there are not only 5 tragedies, there are more than 5 tragedies, but I have just listed the few important ones. And in all these tragedies, we have one common thing, and the common thing is that there was a lack of regulations. And as a result of this, the patients, the subjects who were participating in the trial, their ethical norms were violated. They were not treated properly, they were not consented properly, they were not informed about the research. Apart from this, in the certain tragedies that you can see here, the data was not sufficient. Like continuously we say that the data needs to be sufficient, the data has to be submitted to the regulatory authority, but at that point of time the data was not sufficient, because the regulation did not needed such kind of submissions from the preclinical studies, or it was not so much stringent that okay, only when we have the toxicity data then we'll move to the human studies. No. So as a result, we had certain tragedies, and once these tragedies took place, later on it was like understood by the different regulatory authorities and also by the pharmaceutical companies that they need to have some common platform, some common guidelines which will ensure that the clinical trials are conducted in a proper manner. So the regulations are focused on ensuring that the new drugs are safe, effective, and have the most benefit for the patients. So the focus, when you see the ICH GCP, the good clinical practices, you will see that it focuses on ensuring that the trial process is to ensure that the patients are safe, the patients are getting maximum benefit. So we always do a risk benefit evaluation. We always check a balance of the risk and the benefits. Then it also ensures that the clinical trials are conducted in an ethical manner. In an ethical manner means the patients are consented, they are informed about the research. Documentation is important. The reason behind documentation is that when you see the entire trial process, it comprises of maybe more than 500 to 1000 documents. And why these documents are important? Because at the end of the study, once the data is archived, once it is stored for a longer duration, the documentation would be important for any future audits or any future inspections, just to ensure that whenever an audit or an inspection is carried out, we have sufficient proof that the trial was conducted as per the regulations, as per the standard operating procedures, as per the protocol which was provided by the sponsors. The next focus of the regulation is that it is conducted by qualified staff all the people associated with the conduct of the clinical trials, they are well qualified and they are well aware about their responsibilities. There are few amendments to the regulations which has taken place in the very recent times, and the main reason of these changes or these amendments is, as the time has progressed, the ICIT GCP guideline was formulated in the year 1996. Since 96, there was no change in the regulations. And the recent changes which took place is in 2016. And the reason for the change is due to the changing trends of the clinical trial. Now we are focusing more on the electronic aspects. We are using softwares. We are using like e-systems for documentation, for communication, for clinical data management. So it is important that as the process is changing, as the method of doing an activity is changing, as the procedures are changing, we have to also evolve ourselves. We also have to make some changes to the existing regulations to ensure that the regulations are in compliant to the electronic systems. So you will find that now there is much need, much focus on the 21 CFR Part 11, which is related to electronic records and electronic signatures. Another reason is that using an electronic system is always beneficial because it is more efficient and it is the need of the hour. You will be reducing the cost, you will be becoming more efficient. The unnecessary time which is included when we do any paperwork, when we do any paper documentation, which will also be much reduced. So it's beneficial from all the aspects. Coming to the regulations in clinical research, so as I said, we have the one common regulation, which is the international guideline, and that is known as ICH GCP guidelines. Now, ICH GCP guideline has the guidelines which are from four different we can say disciplines or background. One is the quality guidelines, second is the efficacy guidelines, third is the safety guidelines, and the fourth is multidisciplinary guidelines. So we have guidelines segregated into these four sectors. The original guidelines were issued in 1996, and the new revised guideline, which is issued in 2016, is known as E6R2. So E6 is mainly for GCP. E6 word is used for good clinical practices. Then in USA, we have the 21 CFR. That is one guideline that is followed. CFR stands for Code of Federal Regulations. Another is 45 CFR. In Europe, we have the Directive 2001/20/EC, which is followed currently. Then in India, we follow Schedule Y. Till last year, 2019, we used to follow Schedule Y. Now the Schedule Y has been replaced by the new drugs and clinical trial rules. And this new rule came into existence on 19th March 2019. So now Schedule Y has been replaced. Apart from this, for basic research, for biomedical research, we have the ICMR guidelines, which is Indian Council of Medical Research, and we also have Indian GCP. So in India, whenever we need to do clinical trials, we have to follow the ICIT GCP and the Indian regulations. In the US FDA, when you see US FDA, I have just put down the titles of few regulations which is followed. Each and every regulation is very much in elaborate, like the first and very important in the current situation, in the current nowadays trend is the electronic records and electronic signatures, which is 21 CFR Part 11. Any company which is providing services in clinical trials, which are providing services of softwares or any e-systems that we use, those systems should be compliant. It should satisfy all the norms which has been outlined in 21 CFR Part 11. Then we have other guidelines which focuses on the patient protection, which focuses on the necessity of informed consent for the patients. There are separate guidelines for children who are participating in the research. We have separate guidelines for the ethics committee, which talks about the composition, the functions, the responsibilities of the ethics committee. That is outlined in IRB, that is 21 CFR Part 56. Then we have separate guidelines for submission of applications. So the applications which I mentioned in the beginning of the session, that is the IND application and the ND application. So we have 21 CFR Part 312 for IND and Part 314 for new drug applications. Then we also have guidelines, separate guidelines for biologic products license. Minimum requirements for any global trial. So as Rajat had mentioned, that it's not only that we do trial at one hospital or at one center. It depends which phase we are doing the studies. Like for example, phase 1 studies might be single centric because the patients, the number of like people who are involved, the number of volunteers who are involved are very less. So that is a single centric studies. Apart from this, like the phase 2 studies, phase 3 studies, phase 4 studies, these are multicentric studies, and these are this could be just an Indian study or it could be a global trials. So for global trials, we have to follow the ICGCP and any country specific regulations. So as I said, in India, if I need to do a clinical trial, it has to be conducted. It should follow the ICGCP regulations and the Indian regulations. So the country specific regulation has to be followed. These are the different regulatory bodies of different countries. Like in USA, we have the US FDA, the United States Food and Drug Administration. In India, we have the CDSCO, that is Central Drug Standard Control Organization. In Europe, we have the EMA, that is European Medicines Agency. In the United Kingdom, we have MHRA, that is Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency. For Canada, we have Health Canada. I have listed only few regulatory bodies. It's not only that we have only these regulatory bodies. As per the different countries, they have their own regulatory bodies which are responsible for granting approval for the conduct of trials, granting approval for manufacturing of the products, granting approval for marketing of the products. Coming to the different players, like who are the people who are actually involved in the clinical trial process. So one is the investigator. Investigators are the medically qualified or the dentally qualified individuals who are responsible for the conduct of the study. So these are the people who are working at the hospitals or at the clinics. Hospitals could be private or a government hospital, and they are the people who conduct the studies. So any medically qualified person who is conducting a clinical trial would be known as an investigator. Then we have the term subject. So subject word is used for the patients who participate in the clinical trial. The term sponsor. So sponsors are the pharmaceutical company, the organizations or agencies which has three main responsibilities. One is providing the finances to the conduct of the study, because doing a clinical trial takes a very long time. It takes 12 to 14 years and it requires a lot of resources. So all the financial burden is borne by the sponsor. Then sponsor is also responsible for initiating the studies, and they are also responsible for managing the study as a whole. Then we have the ethics committee. So these are the bodies. These are bodies which are a part of any institution, or it could be an independent body, and it comprises of people both from medical background as well as non-medical background, and their main aim is to review the research projects, research protocols which are submitted to them, and give their approvals. So once the ethics committee has given approval for the conduct of a clinical trial, then only the trial will be conducted at the particular hospital or at the particular institution. So they are mainly focused on ensuring the safety of the patients. And ethics committee directly coordinates with the investigator. So any information, any updates is given by the investigator directly to the ethics committee, and the ethics committee will give their opinion directly to the investigators. So they don't interact with the sponsors. They have a direct interaction with the investigators. Then we see another word, which is monitor. So monitor are basically the people who are responsible for monitoring or checking the progress of the study, to check the validity of the data, to check the integrity of the data, to ensure that the trial is being conducted as per the protocol provided by the sponsors. So they have to visit the sites at frequent intervals. They go to the hospital where the trial is being conducted at frequent intervals, and they check all the data. They check all the information which the investigator has collected on the patients. So for example, the investigator gave the investigational product to a patient. What was the effect? Did the patient have any side effects, any adverse reactions? In case if the product was given for any say to heal a suture, to heal a wound after a surgery. So is the product able to reduce the inflammation? Is it able to reduce the pain or not? So basically, the investigators will be collecting the data as what they observe on the patients. And this data will be reviewed by the monitors through a visit which is known as routine monitoring visits. So all the subject data that is being collected would be reviewed. It will be evaluated for consistency, validity, and integrity. And then based on the outcome of the study, the result would be submitted to the regulatory authority. So another important player is the regulatory authorities. Coming to the process of clinical trials. So apart from the drug discovery and the preclinical study, how do we begin with the clinical trial? How do we proceed further? So the first step is the clinical development plan, where we plan, because in order to start anything, if you are doing a project, if you want to start a project, you first have to plan. Similarly, when we are doing a clinical trial, we have to plan that, okay, what is the indication? What will be the sites where the trial would be conducted? Will the sites be single centric, global studies, multi-centric? So all that would be discussed in the clinical development plan. Apart from this, whether the trial will be blinded, unblinded, randomized, non-randomized, so all that would be discussed at the clinical development plan level. So this is before the conduct of a clinical trial. Then once we have the plan in place, the second thing would be to develop the document. So you have the plan ready. Now the second step is to develop the documents like the protocols, the investigator's brochure, the consent documents, the case report forms, then the consent of the patients, any translations which are required for different regions, like informed consent is translated in regional languages also, because it has to be understood by the patient. So all that would be done at the like this stage. It is also the before of the conduct of clinical trials. So that is preparation of trial protocols. The next step would be to select the sites. So we have the plan ready, we have the documents ready. Now we have to select the sites, the hospitals where the trial will be conducted. Because all of us know that if you just try calculating, there are a lot of hospitals, both in India and globally. Each country has a lot of hospitals. So which hospital has to be selected for the conduct of the study? So it has certain prerequisites, like the sites or the hospitals which will be responsible for the conduct of the trial should have the required resources. For example, the site should have sufficient patients. I need to do a study on, say, hypertension. The site which I'm selecting should have patients on hypertension. Then I need to have certain infrastructural support, certain resources. I should have an archival location. I should be able to store the documents. So all these are like basic resources based on which the sites are selected. Then once the site selection is done, then we get the approvals, we submit the documents to the ethics committee, we take their approvals, the agreements are signed, and once the agreement is signed, the sites are initiated, they are started. Once the sites are started, which means now we can officially enroll, screen the patients. Patients are screened, and based on the criteria which is present in the protocol, they are provided with the investigational product or the comparator agent, and the data is collected. The data is like observed by the investigators. It is collected in the different templates, forms, documents, and all this data would be then monitored by the monitor. So that is during the conduct of clinical trials. Now, when the monitor is monitoring the data, for example, I'm the monitor of the study. I go to a site and I find that in the protocol, it is said that at a certain visit, the patient's blood sample had to be collected. And I checked that the patient's blood sample was not collected at that visit. Or in case if the blood reports are available, there is a discrepancy. There is a mismatch between the data which is there in the reports and the data which is entered into the softwares or in the case report forms. So what do I need to do? I need to raise a query because I cannot proceed with the data. That data has a discrepancy, that data has an error. So that is also a part of the monitoring visits. In the monitoring visits, all the data, each and every information, each and every small bit of information is checked by the monitors, and wherever they find an error, mistake, discrepancy, they will raise a query. Once they have evaluated the data is sent to the data management team. At the data management team level also, they again check the data is checked kind of second time, and in case if they find any errors, they will again raise a query and send to the sites. Why we focus on these activities? Why are we doing this multiple times? To ensure that the ultimate information which is analyzed is free of all the errors. So that is one of the very important roles of the data management team. Once the trial is completed, now this would be repeated for the n number of patients, which is like the sample size. If I have a sample size of 200 patients, this process will be done for all the 200 patients. Then the trial would be concluded. It will be end. So that is done by a site closeout visit. Once the site closeout is done, then the entire data, which is now ready with the data management team, that will be sent to the biostatisticians or with the SAS experts for analysis. Once they analyze the data using softwares, formulas, the final result will be given by them. And the final result will then be written down in the form of a medical document, in a form of a scientific document, which is known as clinical study reports. Now, this report has to be given to the regulatory authorities. And once the report is submitted, it also has to be published in the different publications on the different journals, because whether the outcome of a trial is a positive or a negative outcome, in both the circumstances, the end result has to be published. Coming to the growth ladder in clinical research. So in clinical research, uh, the growth is obviously very progressive as compared to the other sectors of the society. You have a chance to enter the industry as a clinical research coordinator or a clinical trial associates or a clinical trial assistant. Apart from, uh, sorry, who's, can you please mute yourself? Okay. So sorry for the interruption. Okay, so when we see the growth ladder, any person can enter the industry as a research coordinator or as a clinical trial associate or as an assistant. Apart from this, again, it's not limited only to a CRC or a CTA. We have different profiles for regulatory record specialists, people who deal with the essential documents, because as I said, clinical trial does not have only 1, 2, or 10, 50 documents. It may have 500,000, 1,500 documents. So we have a separate profile for maintaining those records. Then there is a need of electronic trial master files. So there are numerous positions in the ETMF profile as well. So in any level, if you enter, the growth is always progressive. If you are working stringently, you can see that in the next upcoming few years, you can be a project manager. Okay, why clinical research as a career is good, or why is it beneficial? One reason is that it gives, uh, excuse, whosoever is unmuted, could you please mute yourself? Okay, so one reason is that it is a very challenging career. Challenging because you are not limited to only one indication, you are not limited to only one project. We have numerous indications, and for every disease, for every indication, for every new molecule that we work upon, you face challenges. So it's actually a very challenging. At the same time, it is a very informative, and it's always a learning career. So it's not that when you enter the industry your learning stops. When you enter the industry your learning will continue. It's constant growing and updating. So as you can see from the present scenario, the need of clinical research is not going to vanish from the market. It's always a growing industry, and the reason why it is required is that even the like the different companies, they look for people who are trained, who understand about the clinical research process, who understand about the regulations. Then you get an opportunity to work with the medical experts. A
Right.
constant, quick, and effective growth in position and earnings can also happen from in this industry. Opportunities to travel domestic and international. So as I said that in the clinical research industry, it's a learning platform. So for every clinical trial that we start, the sponsors have a investigators meeting where you get an opportunity to travel maybe in India at different locations or maybe abroad. So, and you also have growth opportunities overseas. So the job market is not limited only to India. You also have opportunities across India also. Wide range of roles available. So as I said, it's not only limited to clinical research coordinators. You have different job roles now as the need of the time, because as I said, we are also using electronic systems in the clinical trial and the clinical data management. So even for those electronic systems, there is a requirement of people from life sciences background. So it's not that it needs only people from IT background. There is a need of people from the life sciences background who understand about the research process, who understand about the functioning of the human system. Career growth path is both vertical and horizontal. So you have growth opportunities both within the company and outside the company. Continuous training opportunities, because whenever any new project is started, the sites, the sponsors, they ensure that their staff, the people who are working in that project are well trained and they know everything about the protocols or the study that is being conducted. So as a part of the site operations, the sites, the team at the CRO level, the team at the data management level, all this team is trained. So it's giving you continuous training opportunities. Coming to the role of clinical data management. So through the clinical trial process, we have lot of data which is collected, lot of data which is generated, and this data is related to the patients. Clinical data management is basically a branch again which helps us to ensure that all the data which is collected in the clinical research process is accurate, it's complete, it's logical, and it is consistent. So the clinical data management team will ensure that there are frequent checks done, frequent quality checks done, and to ensure that the data is free of any errors, free of any discrepancy. So they use different softwares like the Oracle Clinical, the ClinSoft software. Then we have the Rave, we have OpenClinica, MyClin. So these are only few softwares which I have listed down here. Apart from this, there are a lot of softwares which are used by different companies for their projects. The next part in continuation with clinical data management is the SAS. So SAS is a tool which helps us to analyze all the data. So after the analysis through the SAS systems, we get the information about the safety and the efficacy. And then this data, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, would be compiled in the form of a clinical study report and submitted to the regulatory authorities. And the software, the latest software that we are using is the SAS 9.4 version. Now coming to the focus of training of clinical minds. So We ensure at Clinaminds that all the students are provided with adequate training. They are provided with updated information. So to ensure that the information which reaches to our student is an updated information, we keep on revising and updating the syllabus. We keep on revising our contents on a timely basis as per the needs of the industry. We update the course content at a regular interval. And during the trainings, one thing which we ensure that the training which is given at all the centers is uniform. So whether a training is being imparted at Noida head office or it is done at any of the centers, we ensure that there is uniformity, so that irrespective of the location, all the students are provided with the same knowledge and the same skill sets. The batch sizes are small so that we can focus on each and every student, and the small batch sizes actually helps us to see the progress of every student who is enrolled with us. We take feedback from the students on a time to time basis, and we also ensure that the students learn through a practical based approach. So it's not only theoretical sessions. When we talk about the site operations or when we talk about the consent process, we ensure that we show them videos or we show them some role plays, and we provide them with the templates or the live documents which are used in the clinical trial process, so that you have a understanding. You can correlate what you have read theoretically and what you are able to see practically, because when you are learning through a practical based approach, the retention is for a longer time. You are able to retain the things for a longer time. The sessions are interactive, so whether it's a classroom program or it's an e-learning, like in an online program, we ensure that the sessions are interactive. We like take the feedback, we ask questions to the students at frequent intervals, so that to ensure that the students are equally attentive and they are listening properly, and in case if they have any doubts, they can clarify simultaneously. We also have regular assessments. Certain assessments are done during the sessions in the form of question answers. Apart from this, we also have assessments separately conducted, which can be in the form of quiz, or it can be in the form of certain debates or PPTs on the subject or on a certain topic. Then before we start with any new chapter, any new topic, we just do a quick recap of the previous topics which has been covered. Because in this sector, in clinical research, pharmacovigilance, data management, everything is interlinked. So if you have a clear understanding of the previous topic, you will be able to relate things in a better manner. Then we ask questions to the students at the end of the session. So before we conclude any topic, we just have like 5-10 minutes of quick recap, quick quiz to the students, quick question answer to the students, so that to ensure that they are attentive throughout the sessions. And at the end of the program, we have the final examination. This is the software that we use for training the students on clinical data management. So I would give you a quick recap of the software. Okay, so the software is named as ClinSoft. So this is a demo software which we use for training purpose. I would be quickly taking you through the tabs and show you. Uh, so this software is used both for electronic case report forms and for clinical data management. Okay, so I have logged in into the software, and you can see this is the home page. And we have different tabs on my left hand side, and in these tabs you can see we have a tab for study documents. So in case if in the study the sponsors or any monitor wants to upload certain documents, they can upload the documents from this section. So we have this upload document section. Any document which I want to upload, I just need to enter the name, the document title, and I can upload the documents. Similarly, if I want to download any of the documents, I can download it from here. Apart from this, I have the admin panel where I can create new sites. I can create access for different hospitals which are a part of the conduct of the study. I can create new users, which means I can create the credentials. I can create access for the different people who are working in the team. I can assign the people with the sites. Just a minute. So I can assign the users with the site, which means I can allocate, like person one is working for site XYZ. So I can allocate that person to that site. I also have the option of audit trail. So this is again a very important aspect of any of the e-softwares. There is always a need of audit trail, which is the kind of, in layman language, I would say it's an activity history. In a technical language, this is a computer generated, time stamped, date stamped history, which should reflect in any of the e-softwares. And this is a need of 21 CFR Part 11. Apart from this, I also have the option to manage the user. So if I want to make some changes to the users, for example, I want to make alterations to the email IDs, or I want to make alterations to the phone numbers, or to the role which they have in the clinical trials, I can make changes from the manage user section. So currently I have these users. If I want to make any changes to the users, I want to change the contact number, I want to block somebody from using, I can directly do it from here. So we have an edit button. Then this is the section where we can do data entry. So I can enroll a new patient. I can create a new patient from this section. So I can enter the details of the patient here, and once I submit, I would be able to create the ID for that patient in my system. Then this is the subject list, which helps me to get a list of all the patients which are enrolled. So you can see for different centers, we have different patients enrolled. So if I want to see any patient, I want to check the information for any patient. For example, I can click on this and it will redirect me to a patient's page. So directly I can go and explore the patient's information which has been entered. So since this is a demo software, so we have just included three visits. For any actual studies that are being conducted, these would be as per the visits of the protocol, as per the plan of the study. Then I also have a section for queries. So this is the section which is most likely handled by the data management team. So queries are any discrepancies. So I have the option of raising the queries. I have the option of responding to the queries. I can see all the closed queries which I have. Then the data view, which will again show me the patient list. Then I have the option of database lock, where I can lock and unlock a patient. So locking and unlocking means that in case if a patient's data is locked, no further changes can be done. And in case if a change is required, we need to do the subject unlock or the database unlock. So database is locked once we kind of complete the study. And the last section is data extraction, where I can extract all the information using the Excel. So directly I can extract the data from here. So that's all from my end related to clinical research and clinical data management. Uh, After this session, you would be having an interaction with Mr. Kuldeep, and he would be providing you with an insight on pharmacovigilance, and also what exactly pharmacovigilance is, and also a short demo on the pharmacovigilance software. So I would request Kuldeep to continue with the session.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome you all to this demo session. And before I proceed, I just wanted to let you know whenever whatever questions you came come to your mind during this session, please mention that question in the chat box so that we will be taking those questions after the session is over. Okay, so let's start. In this particular topic session, we are going to discuss about the pharmacovigilance overview, the definition of pharmacovigilance, what basically pharmacovigilance is all about, and what are the some of the terms that are used in pharmacovigilance. Then we have the end-to-end cycle of pharmacovigilance, end-to-end pharmacovigilance cycle. It starts from which phase and ends at which phase. Then we will talk about the basic. Sorry, is somebody not on mute? I request you all, please be on mute. Thank you. So next we will talk about the specificities in our course uh, in clindamyces about pharmacovigilance. What are those? So let's start. Pharmacovigilance is, if we talk about the definition, it's basically defined by the WHO, that is World Health Organization, and is defined as the science and activities relating to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of the adverse effect or any other drug-related problem. So this is basically the entire process of first collecting and detecting the adverse effects, then do the assessment of those events, and then understanding and prevention. So this overall procedure is termed as pharmacovigilance. And pharmacovigilance starts from phase one of clinical trials. That is known as clinical trial pharmacovigilance. And after the drug is in the market, after that, the pharmacovigilance is known as post-marketing pharmacovigilance, or you can say post-marketing surveillance. This word pharmacovigilance is a combination of two words. Pharmaco is Greek, which means drug or medicine. Vigil is a Latin word, and it means to watch, keep awake, or alert. So this is about the definition part. Uh, Next we have is why pharmacovigilance is that important. There was a line that was given by one of the scientist, Dr. Vladimir Lipakin in Geneva 2005. It states that dying from a disease is sometimes unavoidable. However, dying from an adverse drug reaction is unacceptable. So this sentence clearly states that the drug is taken to cure the disease, and if anybody dies due to any reaction due to the drug, then that is really unacceptable. That's why pharmacovigilance is very important, to keep a check on the safety of the product, and ultimately it will give you the patient safety. These are some of the common terms that are used in pharmacovigilance. We have adverse event, we have adverse drug reaction, seriousness and severity, causality assessment, and labeling. So let's first talk about causality assessment. Causality assessment is basically the process in which, or you can say it is the process through which the relatedness of the event is checked with the drug. If it is checked whether that particular event is related to the drug or not. So that particular process is known as causality assessment, and it is done in the pharmacovigilance process. So after the causality assessment is done, the adverse event becomes adverse drug reaction if it is related to the drug. So that is the main difference between adverse event and adverse drug reaction. Both adverse event and adverse drug reactions are untoward medical occurrence after taking the product. But the only difference between these two is relatedness or the causal relationship. If the causality assessment is not yet done and the relatedness is not yet established between the event and the drug, it may be related to the drug or it may not be related to the drug. That is known as adverse event. However, after this causality assessment is done in the pharmacovigilance process and that event is found out to be related to the drug, then that event will be called as adverse drug reaction. So adverse drug reaction is the untoward medical occurrence which is having a causal relationship with the drug. And these adverse drug reactions are known as side effects of that drug and mentioned on the label of the product. So labeling is the process in which the particular adverse drug reactions or side effects are mentioned on the label of the product so that patients, healthcare professionals know about the side effects of that product before the patient takes them. This is labeling, and a label is updated as soon as a new side effect or new adverse drug reaction established with that drug, the label of that product will be updated. Now we have this seriousness and severity, these two terms. These two terms are different. Let's talk about the severity first. Severity is about the intensity of that particular event or reaction, how intense the reaction is. And it is classified into mild, moderate, severe, lethal. That is the level of severity: mild, moderate, severe, and lethal. Now, seriousness. If we talk about the seriousness, seriousness is basically what is the outcome of that event that gives you the seriousness of that event, and it has six criteria for it. If that adverse event or adverse drug reaction falls into that six criteria, that event will be called serious event. And if that event does not falls into those criteria, then that adverse event will be called non-serious. Those six criteria are: first, death or fatal. If that adverse event leads to death of the patient, then that adverse event is serious. Second criteria is life-threatening. If that adverse event is life-threatening, that is a serious adverse event. Third is if that adverse event led to the inpatient hospitalization or prolongation of hospitalization of the patient, then that particular event is serious. Then we have the persistent disability. If that adverse event caused the significant or persistent disability in patient, it may be physical, it may be mental, then that will be a serious adverse event. After that, we have congenital anomaly, or it is also known as birth defect. If the mother is taking some drug and due to that drug, the mother delivered a baby with some defects in it, that will be a serious adverse event. The last criteria will be important medical event, IME, or it is also known as medically significant event. So that is the events which currently is not falling under any of the above five criteria that I have mentioned. But if those events are not treated on immediate basis or not taken care on immediate basis, then that event can lead to any of above five criteria. For example, anaphylactic shock. When a patient experiences anaphylactic shock, that time that he is not hospitalized, not life-threatening, no disability, nothing. But if you don't treat that particular anaphylactic shock on immediate basis, if it is not taken care on immediate basis, it will surely lead to the hospitalization of the patient. So that is important medical event or medically significant event, and it is judged on the basis of the medical judgment by the healthcare professional who is doing the case processing in pharmacovigilance. So these are some basic terms related to pharmacovigilance that we have: adverse event, adverse drug reaction. And as I mentioned, the difference between both adverse event and adverse drug reaction is about the causal relationship between the reaction and the drug. And if it established, It is established, it is confirmed that that reaction is due to the drug, that will be known as adverse drug reaction. And if it is not established yet, it may be related to the drug, or even maybe may not be related to the drug, then that particular untoward medical occurrence is known as adverse event. Next we have is end-to-end pharmacovigilance life cycle. So broadly, we have these four steps in pharmacovigilance, broadly categorized into these four steps. Individual case safety report, then we have aggregate data analysis, or it is also known as aggregate reporting, aggregate reports. Then we have signal detection. We have risk management plan or risk management, risk minimization measures that needs to be taken. So let's talk about them one by one. First is ICSR, individual case safety report. This individual case safety report is an adverse event report for an individual patient and is source of data in pharmacovigilance. So this is basically the initial source of data in pharmacovigilance, and it is a adverse event report for individual patient. So when the company or regulatory authority, anybody can receive, when they receive a report from a patient about the adverse event, so that is known as ICSR. Now we have different steps in ICSR also. One is collection of adverse events. Those adverse events are first collected from HCPs, uh, consumers, patients, or from other sources. Then those adverse events are processed in the safety database. That is a software in which the adverse event reports, ICSRs, are entered and processed. In that processing, in that case processing, we have different steps like bookend, data entry, quality review, medical review. Medical review is causality assessment. For every adverse event, the causality assessment will be done in every ICSR, every individual case safety report. And ultimately, what company will do? Company will report or submit all the ICSR to the regulatory authority of that in particular country in which they are working. That is the first step in pharmacovigilance, that we have individual case safety report, and this act as the primary source of data in pharmacovigilance. Next we have is aggregate data analysis, or it is also aggregate report, and it is also called as periodic reports. This is basically a review cumulative safety data from medicine product obtained from a wide range of sources on a periodic basis and submitted the findings to regulators worldwide. So this aggregate report is a periodic report. It contains the data for a specific drug in a specific time, like for 6 months, 3 months, 1 year. So that specific period, whatever ICSRs are reported for that particular drug, all those ICSRs or all those safety information will be summarized in a report, in a single report, and submitted to regulatory authority, and that report is known as aggregate reports. Let me explain you this with an example. If a drug X is there and different ICSRs are reported for drug X from 1st Jan 2019 to 30th Jan 2019, 6 months data we need to take in the aggregate report. So around let us estimate that around 5 lakh reports are submitted for that drug X for 5 lakh different patients. So all those 5 lakh reports are compiled and analyzed, and the summary of all those safety information, all the adverse events that are reported for drug X will be made in a single report, and that is known as the aggregate report, and will be submitted to the regulatory authority. There are different types of aggregate reports we have in pharmacovigilance. We have DSUR, Development Safety Update Report. We have PSUR, Periodic Safety Update Report. We have PADER, Periodic Adverse Drug Experience Report. We have PEBRER, Periodic Benefit Risk Evaluation Report. Then we have Annual Safety Report. We have Summary Briefing Report. All these are examples of aggregate reports which are prepared by the company and submitted to the regulatory authority. Then the next step that we have is signal detection. Signal detection refers to a process that aims to find any indication of an unexpected drug safety problem, which may be either new ADRs or a change of the frequency of ADRs that are already known to be associated with the drugs involved. So the signal detection process basically involves detecting the new signals or new risks for that particular drug. Risk are basically the risk or benefits. There are two different things. Benefits are all the beneficial effects the drug is providing to the body, to the organism, and risk are all the adverse effects. It may be adverse event, it may be adverse drug reaction, it may be side effects, everything that are related to the drug or may not be related to the drug. All those are risks associated with the product. So the signal detection is the process of detecting new signals about that particular drug, which are not reported previously. Not reported previously means those are not related to the drug previously. It was not confirmed previously. So in signal detection, only new information, new adverse effects, new safety information about that drug is detected and confirmed. In this process, the statistical analysis is used. Different methods are used, statistical algorithm methods to calculate the signal association with that product. Some of these methods are proportional reporting ratio, PRR, and ROR, reporting odds ratio. And these are done in software, statistical software, this process. After the signal is detected, the next step would be signal evaluation. That is to confirm whether the signals which are detected are true signals or false signals. Only true signals will be taken forward. And if all signals are false signals, those will be refuted, rejected. That is the signal detection process. Then we have risk management plan, or it can be risk minimization plan. A risk management plan is a document that describes the current knowledge about the safety and efficacy, information on plans of studies and other activities to understand about the safety and efficacy of the medicine. So this basically the risk management plan is the document prepared by the company to identify the risk through signal detection, then to characterize it. Characterize means how much the intensity or the frequency of that risk is. Then they will develop a process or they will take necessary actions to decrease or to minimize that risk associated with the product. The overall aim of this risk management plan is to decrease the risk so that the benefit associated with the product always more than the risk associated with the product, and the risk benefit risk balance is always positive because the drug is given the approval for marketing or given the approval to be in market on the basis of this benefit risk balance only. If benefits are more than risk, then only the drug can be in the market. If risks are more than benefits, the drug will not get the approval for marketing. And after the drug is in the market, then this benefit risk balance changes and the risk become more than benefits, then the drug will be withdrawn from the market or drug recall will be there. So the drug to be in market, its benefit should be more than its risk. These are four broad end-to-end pharmacovigilance life cycle broadly classified into these four steps. There are more, you can say, small steps within these broader steps. Next to these pharmacovigilance processes are there, company need to follow them, this and that. So to keep a check on the company that they are working properly or not, what are the guidelines they should follow, what are the regulations the pharmacovigilance company should follow about the drugs. We have different organizations which will keep a check, which will keep a check on these companies. So some international pharmacovigilance bodies are uh, World Health Organization (WHO), the International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, the Council for International Organization of Medical Sciences (CIOMS), the International Society of Pharmacovigilance (ISOP). These are some international organizations which are taking care of pharmacovigilance. Then we have the regulatory bodies of every country. So here are the list of some regulatory bodies. United States Food and Drug Administration for US, European Medicine Agency EMA for EEA countries, Medicine and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency MHRA in the United Kingdom, Pharmaceuticals and Medical Device Agency PMDA in Japan, Health Canada in Canada, Therapeutic Goods Administration TGA in Japan in Australia, Chinese Food and Drug Administration in China. We have Central Drug Standard Control Organization CDSCO, that is the regulatory authority of India. So these regulatory authorities take care of the regulations, guidelines, keep auditing the companies if they are following the guidelines or not, they are following the regulations or not. So that is done by these regulatory authorities in different countries. These are some of the regulatory authorities. Every country have their own regulatory authority. So this is about the pharmacovigilance overview. Next, we have the pharmacovigilance course highlights at our Clinimates. So the courses that we offer covers every phase and aspect of pharmacovigilance, every steps, be it overall. We have specific courses for aggregate, specific courses for signal detection and risk management. We have the course for a fresher, we have different courses for experienced pharmacovigilance professionals. So we have different courses, and every course includes or covers the topics, the latest topics, and every phase of pharmacovigilance, which are the courses are developed according to the industry norms. Some pharmacovigilance basic overview, pharmacology basics, regulatory agencies, audit, inspection, ICSR, causality assessment, literature search, aggregate report, signal, risk management, vaccine, medical devices, social media, data. Every topic is covered. Everything is in pharmacovigilance covered in our courses. If somebody is experienced in ICSR, if he or she wanted to develop his or her skill to new thing in pharmacovigilance like aggregate or signal, we have specific courses for them also. Then we give hands-on experience of our on the safety database for 1 month. The access of that safety database is given to the students for 1 month, so that they can do live case processing in that safety database. Sessions are conducted from industry experts with extensive knowledge of pharmacovigilance industry, and we give more emphasis on the practical learning part. So that we provide more case studies and more examples, live case studies, and we provide different case scenarios to be entered in the safety database. Course material, as Dr. Vishwa also mentioned, is updated uh, as per the industry regulations time to time on the real-time basis. Now let me show you the safety database. One of the safety database is Safety Easy. The same would be, the access would be provided to the students. So here is that safety database. This is it. This is the safety database that we have. This is the home page of it. And let me show you one case that is entered in it. Here we have different tabs. Request you all to be on mute, please. Then we have different tabs here. We need to enter, like we need to enter the reporter detail, who reported the adverse event to the company. Then we enter the patient details like this. Then we enter the medical conditions of the patient, and we code it with Medra dictionary, that is a medical dictionary that is used in pharmacovigilance. Then we have reaction details, what reactions the patient experienced. Then we have lab test, the test associated with the events. Those are those information. We have drug information, the patient on the drug, the patient experienced the event. Then we write the narrative at the end. This is the short summary of the case that we will write, and there are specific guidelines that are followed for writing the narrative. So this is the software which the student will get the access for 30 days, and the person will do the case processing by his or her own, and experience the live, you can say the same live scenarios that he or she will get when they join the company, because the same softwares will be used in the companies for case processing. That's it from for the pharmacovigilance. And now I would like to just ask Rajat, please take over this session from here. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, yeah, I'm Vinayak. So we'll be taking your queries regarding the course. Just a minute. So the first question was, I'm a biotechnology graduate and now I'm pursuing MBA. So yes, so what are the opportunities? So yes, there are opportunities for you in clinical research, clinical data management, and one which you should be also looking for would be the pharmaceutical business analytics course. So this will be two good options for you. Next question is, I'm pursuing MPharm in pharmacology. I request Rajat sir to reach you for this program in pharmaceutical business analytics. After the program, our Cliniminds Kolkata Center would also reach you if you have any other queries. So what is the guide? Next question is, what is the guidelines for clinical research and pharmacovigilance? I think that's covered in the session. Vipra ma'am, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, Vinayak. Yeah, this has already been covered. And regarding the guidelines, I would like to mention that guidelines is very elaborate, but still every country has like the guidelines focuses on the same common principle that the data should be credible and patient safety should be ensured. But yes, we have covered the guidelines in this session.
Oh, great. So next
Yeah,
we have
Vinayak. Yes, Momita Manik, as you query about that, you as are doing MPharm and looking at career opportunities in pharmaceutical business analytics. So definitely there is no required the prior business knowledge. The business analytics is a completely to be learn the data science or the by tools to analyze the data, and definitely we will give you an skill enhancement program in this pharmaceutical business analytics, in which we will train you about the career and the domain knowledge about the clinical trials. We will train you on this softwares, how to analyze the data using R, Python, SAS, Advanced Excel. This will be also an online e-learning program. And 2 weeks back, we did also this demonstration on this business analytics. So we have a live video already uploaded on YouTube. So after this demonstration, I definitely contact you and send you the link for that, so you can see and get the idea how business analytics useful to your career after completion of your MPharm. Yes, Vinayak, you can take the next question.
Yes. So next question: why animals are involved in the preclinical trials while the drug is set special for the humans? Vikram, ma'am, please, if you could elaborate on
Yeah,
this one.
yeah. Okay. So see, the reason behind this is that yes, the drug has to be used on human subjects, but directly we cannot give the drugs to the humans. So the preclinical testing comprises of testing which is done on animal species, which can provide result closest to what is expected in humans. So when you see the trials, when you see the preclinical studies, the studies are focused on both short-term animal studies, which gives data on acute like the safety, and the long-term studies, which is kind of data on chronic studies. So there is a very important saying which says that all the experiments on animals is conclusive, and the results on the animal studies and the human studies are same. The only difference is the degree. So the degree of difference which you observe in the humans and animals, that is only evident. So any regulatory authority will not give permission to the conduct of human trials until and unless there is data on toxicity, mutagenicity, reprotoxicity, carcinogenicity, and this data is collected through animal studies. So you can expect that there are only few instances when the results may vary, but mostly the results from animal studies are seen duplicated in the human trials. So you can't subject the humans directly to a molecule which we don't know about. So we need some amount of information to proceed further. Okay. Yeah, Vinay.
Yes. We have question for in from clinical research only.
Yeah. So the
That
preclinical steps. Yeah.
yes, from Naga Puja. What are the preclinical steps involved?
Okay. See, the preclinical steps, again, if I try elaborating, the session would be again a very short session here.
Ye-
It's a very short
Yeah.
duration. The main points which I will emphasize is the preclinical steps requires to, like, it helps us to detect the toxicities. It helps us to assess that what is the drug distribution. So you have studies on kinetics and dynamics which are done. Then we have again, as I answered the previous question, we have short-term and long-term animal studies. So this actually is a very elaborate session, which itself takes around 2 to 4 hours.
Oh, yeah. So this was
Yeah.
covered. Yeah. So next question. How do the benefits of patients as per regulations are ensured? Uh, this would be
Okay.
your.
Yeah. So, see, I can explain this you with a very simple example. For example, we are developing a drug for oncology, right? And we know that for oncology, with a chemotherapy, there are a lot of side effects. Each one of us knows. Now, for example, I am trying to develop a drug for chemotherapy, which will cause side effect, but it also shows a very promising result in the reduction of the tumor size. So when I compare the benefit and the risk in this case, or the regulatory authorities will compare, what are they going to compare? They are comparing the reduction in the tumor size as compared to the temporary side effects, maybe the pigmentation or the hair loss. So what is more beneficial? Clearly it's evident the benefit is more. The tumor size is reducing, so the patient might have a longer lifespan. The side effects, which are temporary, is a side effect, it is a harmful effect, but as compared to the benefit, it can be considered while giving an approval for the trials. So the benefit and the risk evaluation varies from study to study. It varies from indication to indication. So this is how we do a benefit risk evaluation.
Great, great. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, so we have next question from Rohan. He is asking, I have completed my B Farm and has also completed his diploma in clinical trials and regulatory affairs. He's looking for placement opportunities. So if you would have done course from Cliniminds and they did not give you the
So Rohan,
placement, so
uh, Rohan, if you are there, so use Cliniminds is not working
Yes,
as a
yes,
part
yes,
of
yes.
consultancy. We are in education sector and we are offering the skills. Then we provide the placement support to our candidates. So for the
Okay.
placement consultancy, you can please contact to another consultancies who give the direct jobs.
Actually, I already completed my PGDM, but I didn't get any opportunities till now. So I'm looking for in
So that
pharmacovigilance
opportunity
sector.
must be from where you did your PCDM, from where you did the PCDM.
It's a Jadavpur University.
So,
So I
so
think
if
they
you would
should
have
provide you
done,
the placement support, na?
They
So they
didn't
should
get.
provide you the place.
They didn't show. They don't show it actually.
So this
Didn't
is the
get any.
fault of the university. You choose that for to go in the program. This is the fault of that Jadavpur University who not providing the placement support. But Cliniminds give the 100% guaranteed placement interview till you get student placed. We have all 100% placement track record. So after this conversation, our Kolkata team that individually contact you and give you the reviews of that
Okay.
students who get placed. So you did the
Okay.
clinical research regulator. We give you a more options to can go with that, and definitely we will can help you to avoid the placements up.
Okay. Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
okay. So next question is from Sujil. I've completed my B pharmacy and I need to get into pharmacovigilance. Sujil, first step for you, you should do this professional development program, that's advanced postgraduate diploma in clinical research or clinical research pharmacovigilance combined course. You also have the option to do advanced postgraduate diploma in pharmacovigilance. Cliniminds will also be giving you hands-on training on pharmacovigilance softwares, because when you will be working in big pharmacovigilance companies, TCS, Cognizant, IQVIA, Cyphomics, Covance, any company, pharmacovigilance company, you have to work on these softwares. So we give you the hands-on training on these softwares. We also give you the 1 month access of the software, so you are able to practice on that software and get a very good placement from Cliniminds.
So
So next,
it's yes, when I continue with the
yes.
questions.
So next question is from Ranodeep. I've completed my B pharmacy in Ayurvedic pharmacy. From how can I get into pharmacovigilance, clinical data management, or clinical research? Great. So after you have completed your pharmacy, now for you also the next step is to get a professional training on clinical research, pharmacovigilance, or clinical data management if you are willing to enter clinical data management. As a BPharm, you are well qualified, well eligible in pharmacovigilance, which is a very good option for you. So we have this combined course of clinical research, clinical data management, and pharmacovigilance. We would be giving you hands-on training and access of the softwares on the clinical data management softwares, which could be ClinSoft or Oracle Clinical. In pharmacovigilance, we give you the hands-on training and access of the software on Oracle Argus or Safety ZAB Cube.
Okay, sir.
So,
Okay. Thank
and
you, sir.
great, thank you. So next we have some pharmacovigilance questions. I think in data entry, the information are entered individually or on a group. This would be, I think, Vipra ma'am, Kuldeep sir.
Okay, so from a clinical data management perspective, the information is entered individually. That is why in the software, as I mentioned, that there are user access created. So every user who has been given an access, they will be doing the individual entries. Like for example, I have been provided access and I am responsible for a hospital A. So I would be doing the data entry for that hospital. Similarly, it is done on an individual basis. And once that data is entered, then it will send to another team for quality check, quality review. How it happens. But yes, the data, the information is entered individually.
Okay, got it. So, Biswajit, next question is yours. What is area classification? Kuldeep,
Shao, if you are there, we are not understand your question. What is area classification? If you are there, please unmute your mic and speak.
Yes, sir. Uh,
Yeah.
in area classification of clinical research, this type of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Uh, this type of in pharmacovigilance, any area classification in there? Which
Kuldeep
area you
sir,
do work in?
Kuldeep sir, I request you if you are available here.
Yeah. So what is area classification? Well, in pharmacovigilance, there is no that such area classification. In that area classification is such it is in different zones of countries. That's it. Different countries have their own area, and they are regulated by their own regulatory bodies. And overall, internationally, we have international regulatory bodies that are mentioned in the slides. So there is no specific phase one, phase two, or something like that in pharmacovigilance.
Okay. In
Thank you.
different country
Yeah.
have the different language. I mean different writing skill.
Yes, they have different regulations. According to the guidelines and regulations, they need to work accordingly.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Biswajit, the language
Yeah.
might be different, but business language is common. That is English. So that whatever the regulations we are following, what we are doing, the narrative writing, what we are doing, the individual case processing, the for language definitely we use in English only. We can't use any
Okay.
local language to complete.
Thank you.
Kuldeep sir, if you could if you could answer next question also, what was the difference between adverse, I believe it should be adverse event and the side effect of the drug?
Well, as already mentioned during the slides, adverse event and adverse drug reaction, these are two different terms, and adverse drug reactions are also known as side effects. Okay, so adverse drug reaction is when it is established that particular untoward medical occurrence is related to that drug. That particular drug is causing that reaction, and that becomes adverse drug reaction and also known as side effect. But adverse event is when the causal relationship is not yet established. The relationship is not yet established. That may be related to the drug or may not be related to the drug. So then that is
I request to all of you, please mute
Mute,
your mic.
mute.
I request to all of you, please mute your mic. Thank you.
Yes, Kuldeep
So
sir.
with that,
Yeah, so okay. So next is there any difference between clinical trials or clinical research? No. So it's the same. Again, we have question from Biswajit. Can you please tell me about the black box warning in pharmacovigilance? Uh,
well, Vishwajit,
Kul-
the black box warning is given in the label that label of this is this uh, practice is followed in US that some severe or some specific warnings which are very severe related to that product if the company want to highlight that to the individuals or to the patient, they will form that in a black box in the label. So that's in PV that is known as black box warning.
okay. Thank you, sir. So one question from Partha. Please tell me a job role of CRC and a CRA. Rajat sir, Vipra ma'am, if you are, please answer.
Okay. Partha, I would like to briefly tell you, CRA are basically the monitors. As I mentioned in my slide, these are the people who are appointed by the sponsors and they are responsible for the site operations. So they don't function directly at the site, which means their job location is not at the site, it is not at the hospital full time. They are working either at the sponsor end or with the CRO, and they are responsible for going to the sites frequently. So they will go to the site for initiation, for site selection, for doing the monitoring activities and doing the closeout, and their main job role is to ensure to keep a check on the data. So they will review the patient data which has been collected by the site. I would request,
Sorry to
please
interrupt
keep
you, ma'am.
your
Just a minute. Just Mr. Riju Modal, please mute your mic. If you are listening,
Okay.
please mute your mic. Thank you. Yeah, ma'am. Please continue.
yeah. So yeah, thank you, Rajat. So, Partha, CRA are basically people who visit the site at frequent intervals, and they are responsible for monitoring to review whatever information has been collected by the site team. CRCs are the people who work in close coordination with the investigators, which means the doctors who are conducting the trial at the trial site. So they help the medical experts or the medically qualified people, the investigators, in the conduct of the trial. So they are the people who work at the sites, and CRAs are either with the working at the sponsor end or they are working at the CROs. So they go to the sites on frequent intervals.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question in of this CRS and CRA. In both in CRA and CRS, both include in visiting. We visit another site or with the doctors.
No,
So,
the second term you are saying is it's CRC, it's not CRF. CRF is basically a document.
No, CRS. I talk about the CRS.
Yeah, CRA are clinical research associates. In ICIT GCP or in the guidelines, we call them as monitors. So monitors is equal to CRA. Okay, and CRCs are clinical research coordinators who are also known as study coordinators. So they are appointed at the site. Site is the hospital where the trial is being conducted. Okay, so they work at the hospitals where the trial is being conducted. CRA's job location, they work at the CROs, the contract research organizations. They will go to the site at frequent intervals, maybe once in 15 days or once in 20 days as per the monitoring plan, but they don't work directly at the hospital. Their main job role is at the CROs. They will go to the sites to review the patient information. So as I had explained in the slides that the patient's data is collected. So they visit the site to review the patient data, to check for any errors or discrepancies. And who collects that data, who ensures that all the data is collected, that is the investigators and the CRCs.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Next
I have a
question from,
question.
yeah.
If I completed this course, then can I join as a CRC?
yes, definitely. This is the course to provide the job placements in this area. This is a skill that you have to be learn after there. If you made a qualification as a graduation or post graduation, if you start learning the skills, and we will provide the placement support as a role of CRC, as a role of CRA, as a role of CTA, as a role of CDA. So there's a lots of job opportunities, and our Kolkata team contact you individually and give you a more course information details with your own phone. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Next question is from Shedrick. Who are the participants of the ethics committee and their area of specialization? Vipra ma'am, we have a question
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, so Shedrick Ethics Committee, as I said, is an independent body, and it comprises of people from medical as well as non-medical background. So as per the regulations, we need at least one person from a clinical background, which means a clinician. We need a legal expert. Then we need a lay person. We need a social scientist, and we need a kind of ethicist or the philosopher who can ensure that the ethical norms are being followed for every project. So their area of specialization includes they should be experts in their respective disciplines. So for example, if I say clinicians, so they They should be at least postgraduate with experience in the like whichever sector they are postgraduates. Then they should have an understanding about the regulations. Similarly, for a legal expert, the person can be a retired judge or a highly qualified person from a law background. For a philosopher, somebody from a philosophy background, or somebody who is working for like social services, they can be working. Similarly, for a lay person, we don't need any specific qualification. A lay person is kind of a patient representative, a person who does not have an understanding about all these technical fields. So they think from a patient's perspective. So these 5 people will be there in the ethics committee. So this should be minimum requirement whenever we review any project.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Rajesh. If you could please once again tell us the job roles of in CDM clinical data management process. Rajat sir, are you there? Hello, is Rajat Vipra ma'am?
Yes, Vinayak.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we
so
have
the job roles in CDM process. So again, as I said that with the need of the time, the new job roles are actually being created. So very traditional job roles, which I could mention, is we have the clinical data coordinators, again the clinical data associates, which can have different levels. We can have level 1, level 2, level 3. Then we have team from who do quality checks. So there could be different levels. We have assistant project managers, clinical data managers, clinical data project managers. So again, job roles are also variable from organization to organization, but these are the very basic job roles which are present. Apart from this, with the advancement of the technology, new roles are being created every we can say few days by the different companies.
Yes, apart from this, in the CDM, there is a new industry also joined, that is the ETMF process, electronic trial master files. ETMF process is a part of a data management. So there is a regulator binders who require the ETMF profiles in the CROs industry, IT companies. So there is a lots of different name by the different organizations. The process of this clinical data management is same for all organizations.
we have thank you, Rajat sir. We have next question from Biswajit. What is medication error? Uh, Rajat sir, Vipra ma'am,
Yeah,
Kuldeep sir, yeah.
Vinayak, I am
Yes,
answering this.
yes.
So, medication error is basically when there is an error in prescribing the medication or dispensing the medication or administration of medication. So if there is an error in any one of three, then that is known as medication errors. Let me give an example for all three. Like the doctor prescribed a medication for a off-label use. Off-label use means the indication for which that product is not authorized. So that is prescription error. Dispensing error is the pharmacist dispensed incorrect medication to the patient. Administration error are there are many administration errors, like the prescribed medication was once in the morning, once in the night, but patient took it 2 tablets at night, missed the morning one. So that is the administration error. So all these three, if any error is there in prescription, dispensing or administration, that is known as medication error. Thank you.
Got it, sir. Thank you. We have next two questions from Riju that I've completed my MSc in biotechnology in 2019. What is the opportunity for me? Okay, first let us answer this question. As you have completed your MSc in biotechnology, you have this a very good corporate career option in clinical research or clinical data management. You can join either any of the two, as you are well eligible, well qualified, and companies prefer MSc biotechnology students. So the course for you would be advanced postgraduate diploma in clinical research, clinical data management. In this, we would also be giving you first end-to-end training on clinical research, by our senior expert trainers on both the topics clinical research data management. Then we would also be giving you hands-on training on clinical data management softwares, as clinical data management companies require professionals who are well trained on clinical data management software. So we would be giving you hands-on training on Oracle Clinical or a ClinSoft software, and we would also be giving you 1 month access of the software, so you're able to practice that software and get good placement opportunities. Our placement department would be giving you placement opportunities in CROs. That's everybody, please mute. So our placement department would be giving you placement opportunities in CROs, that's clinical research organizations, pharmaceutical companies, clinical data management companies, hospitals who are doing these clinical trials and data management activities. Next question is from you. Is all the courses which are provided by you are in online mode? Right now, as there is a lockdown, we have this fantastic mode, that's e-learning mode. That's like a virtual classroom. There are expert trainers who will be teaching you as you study in a classroom facility. So they would be teaching you end to end as you study in classroom, clinical research, data management softwares. So all the things we are well equipped to teach you and give you the placement opportunities, as our students are getting placed at this time also.
Yes, Riju, we have a classroom mode also, but during the lockdown period, so once the government instruction will come out, when we going there to get the classroom for the this coaching institutes and colleges and all, then we can give you the date if you're looking for the classroom. But you can utilize your at present time, your lockdown time, you can join our live class sessions. As of now, you connect to us and we will sharing your queries, we answering your queries, our trainer giving the lecture. Same thing we following in further next 3 months if you join this program, and definitely you will be get the same training as the training we provided in classroom mode. Everything is same. So we are offering this e-learning program in the 50% fee rebate scholarship to all of you who wants to join this program. We are offering the straightforward 50% scholarship with everything same as the classroom mode, training mode, with the live lecture, software training, placement support, everything. So our Kolkata team definitely reach out to you and give you details on that after this demonstration. So Vinayak, please next question.
It's from next question is from Shedrick. Can I have a proposal regarding developing a drug on both humans and animal testing, and get
Yes,
sponsors from you? I
yes,
so
I think this is the business to business dealing with looking for the sponsorship and all. So we also take a part of the work to in this area also. So I would request to please send your details, your company details, your drug details. If you have any synopsis about your drug class for the clinical trial purpose, please share with you info@clinimans.com. So we'll definitely revert you back on this individually. So please note it down the mail ID, that is
sure.
info@clinimans.com.
Yes, correct. So go
Please
ahead. Should I go
continue with
ahead?
the.
Yeah. So next question from Arup. So which software which they are used to go through pharmacovigilance process? So there are different companies use different pharmacovigilance softwares. You would be getting hands-on training on softwares which are widely used in the industry. That would be Oracle Argus or Safety Easy, which is from a French company, AB Cube Solutions. So Safety Easy, AB Cube, and there are many other softwares used in different companies, different pharmaceutical companies or pharmacovigilance companies. Uh, Next. Yes, Shedrick sir, can I get an expert in our where I wish to? Shedrick sir, I suggest you if we could connect after the demo session. We would like to get the details and will reach you on this business. model which you are looking for. So any other questions? If anyone, Rajat sir, if please, if you could.
Yes, Riju Mandal, this is the, yes, we are offering the 50% scholarship, the fees detail, course detail, everything you will be get on mail very shortly. We will send all the information for all individual mail IDs that we have registered by you. So our Kolkata team also contact you on this phone, and or you can note it down the numbers. That is 9910068241, or you can reach out our Kolkata representative very shortly. And Mr. Cedric, I will definitely try to connect with you, Mr. Kamal Chani, regarding this business proposal, or you looking for our training for our software training for the business analytics and data analysis profile. So we will connect you very shortly with our Mr. Kamal Chani on this. So I think any more queries?
I think it's done. We have got.
Yeah.
We have just a minute, sir. Rajat sir, we have one more question from. Okay, so Riju, we will reach. Riju, our Kolkata center, Tamal sir would reach you and give you all the course details, course brochure, very recent placements of MSc biotechnology students who got placed very recently in good MNC companies. He would be sharing all the details with you, and you can then probably interact him one-to-one on your queries. If you want to reach me or Rajat sir, you can reach us anytime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for attending this demo session, and thank you, Dr. Vipra ma'am and Kuldeep sir, for giving the very precious knowledge about the clinical research industry. So definitely, please reach out our for more course information, different courses. You can visit our Cliniminds website, that is www.cliniminds.com. So you can go visit our website, and if any more doubts, no any query, please contact back us very soon. We're definitely happy to answer you all the queries. So thank you so much for everyone. Have a nice day. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, Rajat sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Rajat. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session. It was pleasure interacting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.